Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Beth French. Now, this is a bit of a mouthful, but Beth is an ultra-marathon, open-sea, ocean swimmer who was once a Buddhist nun. She's a single mother who homeschools her autistic son, Dylan, and she's also an adventurer who suffered from a crippling illness. We're going to be speaking to Beth all about this and more. Enjoy. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Sarah.
So where are you based at the moment? Where are you living?
I live in Somerset. I'm a Wurzel, born and raised in the southwest of England.
Oh, fantastic. Now, just for those people who are international and abroad and maybe don't know where that is, are you close to the water?
No.
I honestly thought you were going to say, yes, I live on the coast. I'm really close to the water.
I would love to. No, I mean, good swimmable water is about an hour away, so it's not too far. No, I dream of living right on the water's edge, but for every mile you get closer to the sea where I am, you add another $5,000 to your property, and I'm about 50 miles from the sea. So the property price goes up quite a long way when you get close to the sea here.
Oh my goodness, I can imagine. So for those people who don't know you and haven't heard about some of the different challenges that you've done, how would you describe yourself?
Ooh, if you like alliteration, I'm a self-employed single mum who homeschools her son with autistic needs and sea swims for sanity. That's kind of in a nutshell. I came from being in a wheelchair with ME when I was a teenager, and had kind of my adventurous and sporting life kind of wiped out before it even really got any traction. And I've kind of pieced it together and felt the need to explore that side of my life since I've had my son. So yeah, that's what I do now. I kind of explore with him and explore my potential and, challenge myself to overcome diagnoses and limitations and expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading on your website it says, from wheelchair bound to world-class athlete. And I'm just honestly blown away by some of the stuff that you've done. But let's go back to your childhood, because I was also reading that, when you were younger, you actually did spend a lot of time in the water and were a little bit of I want to say a water baby.
Yes.
Take us back to your childhood and what that was like.
Well, I grew up slightly unusually, I suppose, now. My parents kind of had a dream of being off-grid, which is coming back around now. Back then, it was very much just coming out of the sort of flower power era. And my dad is amazing with his hands. So he would turn the spinning wheel that my mum would then spin the wool from our own fleece, from our own sheep. And then she'd dye it from the hand, dyes from the hedgerows. And, we grew our own vegetables. We bred our own meat. We didn't say what's for dinner. We'd say who's for dinner, which sounds horrendous now to a lot of people. But actually, we had a relationship with that animal. So it was a very much a mindful way of life. I sort of was brought up very much close to the sort of the cycles of nature and the seasons. And, it was quite hard graft, don't get me wrong. But I was the kid who would take their nappy off and climb in a puddle. There are most pictures of me sub 5. I am in a bucket in a stream. My mum's having to hold me back from the water's edge, that kind of thing. So if there was water, I would get in it. And I was the bane of my mum's existence when we went to the beach. There are 4 of us. I'm number 3. And I just had this compulsion. I can remember clearly being probably about 5. And there's a little beach called St. Audrey's Bay, which is not far from where I am, and certainly much closer to where I was brought up. And it's not an amazingly beautiful, it's the Bristol Channel, so it's not tropical warm. But I just had this compulsion to keep heading straight out. And I imagined this land beyond the horizon, and I just knew that I could get there. And, my mum would have to chase after me into the waves, because I would keep going and I wouldn't have the knee-jerk response that when a wave crashed over my head to stop. I was a very early swimmer. I could swim before I was 3. And I've never swum competitively, but I've always felt at home in the water and always felt better when I've been in the water.
Mm. I mean, you said on your blog as well that sometimes that your childhood was almost taken away from you because you started, or do you want to share the story of what happened to you and how you got your diagnosis of ME?
Sure. So I was a very, very active kid. Grew up on a farm, looking after animals and riding horses and roaming the woods. When I was 10, I was sort of struck with an sort of unnamed malady and just kind of flopped. And it looked like one of those those little toys you get where you press the bottom and it looks like they collapse. It was kind of like that. Like all my elastic had just gone. And there was no temperature. There was nothing. My glands were up ever so slightly, but there was no spots, no broken limbs. And, growing up on a farm, you kind of get conditioned that if there aren't spots, no temperature, no broken bones, you have to just get up on and get on with it. And it wasn't until about a year later that I had started to have blood tests. And they said, retrospectively, you may have had glandular fever, but you should be over it by now. And the doctor wasn't very sympathetic and sort of talked to my mum about the fact that it's just hormones. It's that time. She's going through that kind of girly change and she's just going to be a typical adolescent lying around on the couch. You've got to push her. So my mum dutifully pushed me. And so when I was having good days, I was captain of every sports team at school. And then without it being to do with being sporty, and I knew that it wasn't a physical activity, it would usually be around exam time or Christmas or birthdays. I would have a complete collapse and I couldn't even brush my own hair. And I remember I went through self-harm. I went through bulimia with anorexic episodes. I was in a psychiatric unit for assessment. My teenage years were absolute hell because I didn't know what was wrong. I knew something was wrong and I couldn't tell you why or when it would happen. But when it happened, it was like molten lead running through my veins and swimming through tar as much as lava as through syrup. It literally moving hurt. So when I got to my A levels were approaching, I was getting towards driving, was just turning up to 17. I woke up one day and I couldn't walk. I literally couldn't stand on my legs. It was like watching a toddler kind of take its first doddery steps and then collapse. And my mum had to change doctor a few times to find one who would take it seriously. Because by this stage, she recognised that I wasn't faking it. I wasn't, putting it on. I wasn't being a daydreamer, that I was actually struggling and suffering. So we found a doctor whose niece had something similar. And he said, well, you've had every blood test and they've all come back negative. So the only thing I can say is it must be this thing called ME. Go away and rest. That's all you can do. And it literally did feel like my legs were taken out from underneath me. There I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk anyway. But at 17, to be told you might never walk again, that you might never be able to follow that path that you've just been conditioned that you're going to go to A levels, then you're going to do a degree. You might take a year off. You're going to explore the world. I had drive and I had ambition and I had plans for the future. And I had to give up all of them. And it was devastating. It's absolutely devastating to have fought so long to have just tried to be normal and not even managed to be normal. I can definitely say at that point in my life, I hated being in my body. I felt trapped. And that was a real, real low point.
Oh my goodness. I mean, how did you get past that feeling trapped in your own body and, not being wheelchair bound and being exhausted all the time and, not necessarily knowing what it was until you got this diagnosis?
You bounce off the walls quite a lot. I mean, there's a lot of self-destruct buttons that you develop, coping strategies, which aren't healthy. So, through teenage years, yes, there was self-harm. Yes, there was eating disorders. Yes, there was drug use, whether it was alcohol or cannabis, anything to just numb the pain, really, or make you feel something different. And I think getting past that took hitting rock bottom. So my brain basically switched off. And my mum describes a period of about 2 months where I was virtually in a coma. So she'd have to shake me awake, spoon feed me, and I would just loll back, or it would be gone. By the time she'd finished spoon feeding me, I would just sort of flop back on the pillow and just be incommunicado, just non-existent. And she took me to see an alternative therapist because at the time the medical world basically said, just go away and rest. There's nothing we can do. So my mum wasn't. She was determined to kind of try and find some kind of relief. So we went to this alternative therapist who sent my mum out the room, and I was sat down anyway, but he sat down and he said, I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you hate me. And he said, everything that you've ever done, the way you've done it, the way you live your life, the way you think about your life, the way you let people treat you, and the way you treat yourself has led you to where you are now. And you are the only thing that can change any of that. And you're the only person that can walk out that wheelchair. And to me, he told me it was my fault that I was in the wheelchair. And the fury that I felt at somebody laying the responsibility for where I was in my lap at 17 felt so, it lit me inside. I mean, just the fury propelled me forwards. And before I shut down completely in white rage, he did manage to get in that I should go away and write a wish list and give myself reasons to get better and things to live for in the future. And it didn't matter how insane they were, big or small. Even if it was just being able to wipe my own backside when I went to the toilet, that was a goal that I could write down. Any dreams. Could be climbing the mountain. It could be brushing my own hair. So he asked me to write a wish list of, reasons to get better, of things that I wanted to be able to do. And leaving the room there, that was when my brain shut off. And that's when I sort of went into this sort of comatose kind of state. And I remember that was when I started to daydream, to start internalizing and actually visualizing what health might look like for me and imagining amazing futures. And the unfairness, the rage I felt, the fury, the resentment of being trapped in my body, but with my mind being able to work and create these futures, like, right, I need to push out. I need to make some of this come out. I need to at least be able to sit up and write. I need to be able to speak these out. So it was very much a force of will. And Emmy is very much not in your mind, but your mind is your strongest weapon on learning how to find a way through. It's an absolute labyrinth, but you have to find a way through a labyrinth of symptoms, of triggers, of stresses, to be able to piece together days where you can do things.
Oh my goodness. I just can't even comprehend what you were going through at such a young age. So that wake up call, having that conversation, having somebody put that responsibility back in your lap, going home, trying to process it all. Was there a point that came later on? I mean, did things change overnight, or was it just a very gradual change? How did it progress?
So after I left there, it literally was about 48 hours later that I went into this complete shutdown. And it was about 2 to 3 months later where I had been being shaken awake and spoon-fed. So I was lying in this bed in the upstairs of this farmhouse, and my dad was at work. My mum was up in the yard dealing with animals, and I knew that my mum was expecting somebody, and there was a knock on the door. And the next thing I knew was I was at the bottom of the stairs, and I didn't know how I got there. And I had a bit of a panic attack because I had no recollection of how I got there, but I realised that I must have been able to have moved. I must have been able to get myself from the bedroom, down the corridor, down the stairs. And so I called out to the person at the front of the door and said, come in. I'm at the bottom of the stairs. And she knew that I was ill, so she came in. Oh my God, how did you get there? I said, I don't actually know. But if I got here, I'm going to try and get back upstairs. And it was the first time that I managed to crawl myself back upstairs. And the sense of achievement that was, it was like, right, do you know what? I'm going to make myself do that once more in the next week. And it took me about 3 days to sleep that one off. But, about 3 days later, I did manage to crawl down the stairs again. So it wasn't a straight road. And it was in fits and starts. I would suddenly have a spurt where I'd have a couple of days where I would feel almost frenetic with energy and run around like an idiot doing things far too much, far too soon, far too sudden, and have collapses. So, regulation of energy was a bit of a challenge for me, because when you've been trapped for so long, you come out like a greyhound. You just fly like the clappers. And, regulating and managing energy has been something that I've been fascinated with ever since.
I mean, one of the things that sort of fascinated me is how you did look at the alternatives to the different alternatives to healthcare. And I know that you've done a lot of traveling. And one of the things I'd love to talk to you a little bit about is that you ordained as a Buddhist nun. Yeah. And, which just sounds so completely random, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that came about, how long you were there, and just tell us more about that.
Yeah, see, people who look at my life and they see, I've got very few photos. I only got about 10 photos from my 20s. I went away for a 2-week holiday and came back 8 years later. So when I'd been out of the wheelchair for about 5 months, I decided that I needed to go away on holiday for a bit. I needed to remove myself from the expectations and actually from the disappointment I felt of being surrounded by my family who had these expectations of who I was going to be, feeling that I was never going to be able to be that person. So I needed a break. So I decided I was going to go to Southern Ireland. It was close. They spoke English. It wasn't so far that I couldn't make it back if I did have a collapse. So I bought a ticket, a round trip ticket. I went to Southern Ireland. I felt so different getting off the ferry where I knew nobody, where there were no expectations on me. So I ripped up my return ticket there and then. And I went away for a 2-week holiday, came back 8 years later from the other side of the planet. So I ended up running backpackers hostels in Southern Ireland, which led me to meeting a couple of people from Hawaii who said, it would suit you down to the ground. You need to go to Hawaii at some point in your life. So 2 years later, when I'd finished partying in Southern Ireland, celebrating the fact that I could walk and dance and play, I went to Hawaii. I went to Hawaii for 3 months and watched my plane take off. I ended up living there for 3 years, not very good at using return tickets. So I swung a pickaxe for a living because that was where I really discovered real health and vitality. And I swung a pickaxe and a machete on coffee farms and swam every day with pods of up to 90 spinner dolphins. And I'd swim for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. And that was when I discovered swimming in the ocean and falling in love with being able to do it as an adult. Because yes, as a kid, I'd had this compulsion, but I'd never been allowed. And here I was as an adult with the most pristine water to swim in. And while I was there, I had the chance where I was living and working just above Captain Cook Monument, where Captain Cook landed and ended up dying. Just along from there was the last indigenous tribal healthcare practitioner in Hawaii. And it's a healthcare system called Lomi Lomi. And so I decided, right, I'm going to go and I want to learn this. I want to learn from the horse's mouth. I want to learn from this 84-year-old amazing Hawaiian lady. I want to know everything she's got. So I learned the tip of the iceberg. I spent 6 weeks residentially living in her school and just absorbing the culture and the way of looking at the world and the body. And it made so much sense to me. And it's what I still do for a living now. And I love it. And it gave me language for how I could be healthy with my body. And it made me fall in love with my body again. It made me fall in love with what my body can do, which has nothing to do with how it looks, which gives you so much freedom to experience your body. Because even when you're not well, you're still looking inwards. You're noticing something that's not right with your body from other people's perspective or from an observer. But when you fall in love with what your body can do, it's purely experiential. So there's no self-consciousness at all. You're not self-conscious. You are just the doing of it. I wrote an article, years and years and years ago called I Am the Ing, Not the So you're only the swimmer when you're swimming. You're only the dancer when you're dancing. And to embrace the actual ing, the actual doing of it, is what gives me the love of my body and my life. And that's where I came from. So after I'd studied with her, 9/11 happened, which being an illegal immigrant in America wasn't the best place to be. So I had to leave Hawaii and I went to Thailand to study the Thai version of Lomi Lomi, so Nuad Boran, which is the northern kind of more yogic massage. And when I was over there, I had the chance to experience a shamanic meditation practitioner, which blew my mind. And this Thai girl who got me in touch with this shamanic experience, she said, there's a monastery here which you can train to experience what you've just experienced. It's hard work, but if you teach the monks English, I'm sure you'll be able to ordain there. And, in for a penny, in for a pound, if you're going to learn something, jump in with both feet. So I rocked up and they said, well, you can start as a lay person and just do a meditation retreat if you like. And yeah, it was just the most amazing experience. On my third day, they said, you know what? You have meditated for 17 hours a day, 3 days straight. Would you like to continue doing that and see how far you can get? Would you like to ordain? And to me, it was just the easiest thing on the planet. I'd felt that I'd figured out my body, but I also knew that my mind was where a lot of my quirks and fallibilities still remained. A lot of the quirks that would leave me stress-ridden I hadn't answered those questions. So yeah, I ordained and I meditated for 17 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 months straight. And you go some pretty funny places.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think you learnt most from that experience? I mean, did you gain control of your mind through that 6-month intensity in meditation?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up being in the monastery in total for almost a year, just shy of a year. But the first 6 months was such an intense experience. It very much is like channel swimming. You know, now I've done enough channel swims and kind of I understand the process of my brain. So you have this thing called a retreat, which is where you can spend a week or 2 weeks, usually in this monastery, this particular form of meditation. It's a 2-week experience. So you have different exercises to do every day that lead you to deeper and deeper trances, to focus on single pointed concentration more and more and more. And then you end up with this thing called atitan, which is, the translation is kind of determination, where you meditate for 72 hours without sleep, without a break. And it's a kind of meditation where it's considered incredibly extreme and intense. But it's the kind of meditation where you eclipse consciousness. And it's like going through the retreat process. You peel back the layers of the onion, you take apart bits of your personality, and you get to choose not to pick all of them back up again. So yeah, I learned to streamline my mind. I can prioritize. So it's not that I can control it necessarily, because emotions are still overwhelming. I can choose more how I respond to them. I don't have to express them necessarily, and I'm much better at expressing ones that I would rather not. I was never very good at being angry or displeased at anybody, but I'm much better at saying, actually, that's not working for me, rather than holding it inside and boiling. So I learned myself, and I learned the tools of endurance. I learned the mental side of endurance, I think, and I learned to let go. I learned to let go of what you think you know. I learned to let go of all the things that hold you back, because that's what stops you from progressing in meditation is, I don't think I can do this, or, the thoughts or the processes that just don't fit at that moment.
So, I mean, just incredible. I love that when you talked about, you learnt the mental side of endurance. I mean, did you know at this point that you wanted to do stuff, going through the channel and go and do these incredible endurance long swims?
Not a clue. No, it hadn't entered my head really. I mean, I suppose what was interesting was, after having after the monastery, I ended up living in Thailand and going native, Fiji, and going native for a while, and I worked my way back across the world. I got back to England because I wanted to start giving back, because I felt that I'd understood the health processes a bit more. So I set up my business doing a variety of different sort of body works and teaching meditation and that kind of thing. I was told I couldn't have kids. So I reached 30. I was in a relationship with a person who was very much not picked because he was going to be a dad, because I couldn't be a mum. And then I got pregnant. And, a lot of people around 30, it's this big thing. For me, it wasn't a big thing in the sense that, have I got a mortgage yet? Have I got a career that I like? I found myself 30 in a relationship with somebody that was never designed to be a parent, and I was pregnant, having never been expecting to be pregnant. And I knew that me and Dylan were going to be okay, me and the baby. And I knew that me and his dad probably weren't going to be, because he really wasn't ever intending to be a dad. So I dug out my bucket list, because okay, I'm 30. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this parenting thing, knowing that I'm probably going to be doing it on my own? I was actually terrified, if I'm honest, because I thought that is the perfect trigger for Emmy. That is the perfect trigger to have it all relapse. Self-employed single mum. I mean, if that's not stress, I don't know what is. So I dug out my bucket list because I felt this knee-jerk response to do something for me. I wanted to adventure with my baby. Until he was at school age, I wanted to adventure with him. And it just felt it was the first time I'd felt a real compulsion for a long time it was almost like a frenzy, like, I've got to get out, I've got to do something. So my bucket list from when I was 17, I realised that I had ticked off everything on the list except the thing that I'd wanted to do the longest. It was the thing that I always thought that I would never be able to do, which was to swim to France. You know, when I was a kid and I wrote this down on my bucket list, I want to swim to France. It was kind of one of those ones that, you know, I didn't say I wanted to write a groundbreaking novel, but it was, to me, it was on the same level. It was something that was adventurers and athletes like that. They must be a different breed of person. They must have gills, or they must have Olympic parents, or they must be rich, or they must have access to training, none of which I had. And so I kind of put it was a pipe dream. And there I was with this bucket list, looking at this baby going, right, there's only one thing on this bucket list, and it's what I've always wanted to do. Can I do it with a baby? How would that work? And so I trained only when he was asleep, booked my pilot within days of looking at this bucket list. Just went, right, okay, I've got to book it, otherwise I'll never do it. And then however much training I do, that's going to have been enough. So yeah, I booked it for 2 years in advance, which I thought was a sensible length of time for me to train only when he was asleep. Yeah. And that's when I fell in love with the process of it. And I think it was kind of it's a complete cycle of proving that I could manage my ME symptoms. It was also this kind of meditative thing that, having been in the monastery and having that depth of meditation experience and knowing that I could drive my life when I was doing meditation, but then being a self-employed single mum in England, you don't have a lot of time to sit quietly. There isn't. So swimming for me was the perfect forum where the world's always made sense to me in the water. I'm face down. I can't hear the baby scream. The baby can't hear me scream. It's perfect. And it was just, I suddenly felt, yeah, do you know what? This is where I'm going to go with it.
I mean, I don't have children myself, but I was over in Australia when my brother and his wife had their first baby, a baby girl called Grace. And I remember there was, you know, three adults in the house with one baby, and it was exhausting. I mean, I know that we all sense we've I'm saying, like, we, like a team, you know, we felt like a sense of achievement if we've managed to get up or shower, get the baby dressed, have breakfast, go out for a coffee, walk the dogs, and you know, and come back and sit down, and that would be all that we could manage in a day. And so I'm just trying to imagine, you know, those first 2 years trying to swim and train for a channel swim, having a young baby. I mean, did you have support around you? Did you have people helping you out? But basically, how did you cope during those first 2 years, and how did you stop those triggers of ME coming in? Because, to be honest, I can feel my stress levels rising just thinking about, like, oh my God, I don't even know how. Yeah, I mean, how did you cope with that in that time period?
What I've discovered about my ME is it's a particular kind of emotional stress. There are two strands of it. One, and they tend to be around other people's expectations. One is if I'm running a script that I know isn't right, but I'm doing it for expediency, or if I'm doing it to do the right thing, but I know that it's wrong. If I keep running that script, I'll get ill. The other one is I am naive, gullible, trusting, whatever you want to call it. I get deeply, deeply hurt when I get let down. And that can trigger me to get ill. So when I blithely announced that I was going to swim the English Channel, my family were not happy. They weren't particularly happy when I left the country. I was sort of running away and I was avoiding the real world and all this sort of thing. That was, you know, it was outside of their remit. So when I was doing it with a baby, it was not the done thing. So I didn't have parental support at all. It was a really quite a tough time, that side of it. The word swimming was not allowed to be mentioned. Training, nothing. My mum wouldn't look after the baby if she knew I was swimming. So I only trained when he was asleep, and I got teenagers in to sit with the baby while I'd run and do a quick bit of swimming, and then head back. So it was it was a tough time to fit it all in. But actually the emotional stamina, you can use anything in your life and you can turn it into something useful. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't pleasant, it wasn't nice. And it's taken 5 years for my mum to not see it as a rejection of her parenting, because that's what it comes down to. Me doing this is my version of motherhood. I accept that now, and Dylan is helping me shape that now. He's older, but it's my version of motherhood. So no, I didn't have support. And I'm not the sort of person who can rebel. So I actually hid all of my training regimes. I stopped talking about the fact that I was doing it. I squirreled away my money to pay for it. So I didn't do any sponsorship raising. I didn't get any help with that. It became this very, very private, personal thing that I was doing. And I'm actually grateful for having done that now. Although, I do feel envy when people talk about, Lynn Cox's book, Swimming to Antarctica, just makes me bawl, absolutely sob, because her parents shifted across country because her and her brother needed access to swimming. And I don't blame my family in the slightest, but there is a part of me that child in me kind of goes, I just want to be accepted. I'm accepted now. It's not comfortable for them because it's out of their remit. It's not the way that they view parenting to run. But yeah, so it was kind of different. It was difficult. But I've made it my own. And, it's actually made me and Dylan very, very resourceful and very, very close. He knows that if I have a rubbish day at work, I'll come in from work and I'll be a bit, and he'll say, Mummy, go phone the babysitter, half an hour swimming and you'll be happy again. And the first thing he'll ask me in the morning is, Mummy, do you feel better now? So he knows I get a lot out of it, and he gets a better mum if I have access to swimming.
Yeah. Tell us about your channel swim. 2 years preparation. How did it go?
Yeah. It felt like such a relief. I think part of channel swimming training is you train for relentlessness, you train for discomfort, you train for cold, you train for doubts and fears, and you train through all of that. And when you actually get the chance to swim, because with a lot of land-based adventuring, you get yourself training, you sort out logistics, and then you go. But with channel swimming, you can be sat in Dover Harbour, unable to get in the water because the weather's wrong, and then the tide's gone, and then the weather's right. So to actually get the chance to get in the water when it was right felt such a release and a relief. And I remember actively thinking throughout the first 10 hours of my swim how lucky I felt, how blessed I was, how grateful I was to be actually doing this. Whatever happened, whether I made it to France or not, I was swimming to France. I'd made it. As far as I was concerned, I'd already made it, because I'd made it to the starting line. I'd got in the water and I was out there doing it. And it was such a beautiful, empowering experience. So the first 10 hours were blissful and went by far faster than I expected them to. I had ridiculously calm conditions. I have a photograph of me with this sort of sun rising behind me, and I'm just sort of silhouette in the water. And people assume I must be in Hawaii because it's such a beautiful, it looks like a sunset and it's flat, calm water. No, that's the English Channel. It can be like that. And I remember I got to about a mile and a half off French shore, and there's a massive band of current which sweeps around the coast, which is where if your channel swim's going to end, it's going to end there. And that's when they say, right, you have to get down and you have to sprint. And you could have been in swimming for 15 hours at that point, and then you've got to sprint, which feels a bit rude. So I'd been swimming for about 10 and a half hours. I had a mile and a half to go. And they said, right, swim like the clappers. You're in the current. You need to punch through it. So I got my head down and I started pushing anything I had left. 10 minutes later, they were banging on the boat, waving frantically. I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? They said, the tide's turned an hour early. Forget punching through the current. You've been swept down the coast. And I realized the point that I'd been aiming to it, I couldn't even see anymore. It was just gone around the coast. So I knew that I was being swept along, and this big, huge bay had opened up. And they said, look, aim for that town at the far side of it. And I was like, what? They said, look, it could be 3 hours swimming, it could be 8 hours swimming, but that is where you're going to end up in France. That is your France. So knuckle down. The ladder's here, France is there. The ladder's closer, France is where you want to go, your choice. And so I got my head back down and just, that was when all the emotional stuff started to come out, because, you think, right, I'm nearly there. And then all of a sudden it's pulled away. You just go, oh God, can I do this? Can I keep going? Why am I keeping on going? You had to start generating emotions to push you through. And, I did all the sort of sports psychology of, come on, let's push through. That doesn't work for me. I tried swimming to prove to other people who said I couldn't do it. That really didn't work for me. That kind of sapped my energy. I tried swimming for people who believed in me. That didn't work. That was actually quite distracting. I tried to swim for Dylan to make him proud, but that just made me laugh at myself, because he's always going to be proud of me anyway. And then I realized that actually I just wanted to swim because I love it. I love doing it. I love what it's giving me. I want to swim to France because I want to swim to France. And that allowed me to relax and enjoy getting there. And then when I got close, I asked what the time was. And they said, oh, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. And I sort of looked up on the boat, and this realization hit me. It was like, I put Dylan to bed last night. I got up in the middle of the night. I set out to France. I could reach France and be back in time to put my boy to bed. I can swim to France and still go back to being a mum. I can do it. I can do it all in a day. And that just, I know I didn't fly, because I've seen videos of me. I crawled very, very unsteadily onto French shore. But I made it to French shore, and I felt transcendent. I became my own hero, and it's not a puff-chested feeling. It is this sidestep that I fully accept responsibility for my life. And it was this rush of emotion of remembering being in the wheelchair and the guy saying, everything you've ever done, da, 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 da. It's like, okay, it's not my fault, but I can do something about it. Okay, I'm not scared of that anymore. And it was a complete cycle that was like a full stop to me on that version of Emmy. And I made it back, and Dylan was still awake, and he threw his arms around me, and it was just the most joyful thing that I've experienced. It was incredible.
There's so many things in there I love, talking about the emotions, and I think it was really interesting. So where you said, trying to swim for other people, it sort of zapped you, you lost your energy. But once you found your why, that you can swim back to your son, you can put him to bed all in a day. That's what got it through, and being your own hero as well, and actually accepting you for you, and it's so incredibly powerful. I think it's also something which is incredibly difficult to do. I mean, what advice or tips would you have for other people who may be struggling with the weight of other people's expectations about how they live their life, or wanting to live life on their terms?
Yeah, people ask me this, and it is so hard. But being true to you and living your truth and saying your words in your language is horrendously difficult for everybody around you. If you think it's difficult for you, you're changing the goalposts on every single person you know. But it gives them the chance to see a little bit more clearly themselves. So every time you speak your truth, you're giving everybody a truer perspective for themselves to see. If we're the mirror for everybody else, you want to have a straight mirror. You don't want to be in a house of mirrors in a fun fair where it's all skewed. You want to be as honest with yourself as possible, so you can be honest with other people, and it's allowing them to take responsibility for their lives. If you're constantly living up to somebody else's expectations, I always say, so people say to me, I say, if you're not full of yourself, who are you full of? In England, we have this attitude that you shouldn't be full of yourself. We consider that a bad thing, because we assume that's, peacock, puff-chested, arrogant, whereas actually you need to be full of yourself. You need to be complete. And that doesn't mean that your cup is full. You can be receptive to other people's ideas, but you've got to fill your own space. You've got to be able to reach out and be honest with your direction.
So you wrote your wish list when you were 17, when you were wheelchair bound. It was a final thing, to swim to France. Absolutely incredible. You've done it in time to go home and to see your son. You've put your son to bed. You've ticked the final thing off your wish list. How did you celebrate? Did you celebrate?
No, because this was a very secret thing. I had nobody to call. My parents didn't want to know. I had basically squirreled this away. So I celebrated by booking my next swim.
So let me just, how old were you at this point?
33.
33, accomplished this huge, amazing challenge. Nobody knows anything about it.
Nope.
But so you celebrated. I've always wished I was there, to be like, oh my God, get the champagne out. But actually, but I suppose actually what's really interesting is actually sometimes you don't do these challenges for other people. It's actually, it's so for you and you doing it. And obviously, don't get me wrong, it's amazing to share it and to show other people. But actually deep down, it's not really about that. It's actually something that you've wanted to do for the past 15, 17 years. And you've gone out and accomplished it. So, I mean, so you didn't celebrate, but you did decide to book another swim. What did you decide? Yes. Was this what you were thinking about while you were swimming the channel? What you could do, what your next challenge would be?
I wasn't thinking about my next challenge when I was swimming, but when I got back home, my celebration genuinely was to curl up with my little boy, wake up the next morning and make him breakfast and be our little family unit. You know, to go back to being normal, right? To fit the English Channel into what I call normal was the most amazing experience. That was kind of my secret pleasure. It was my guilty pleasure of, I swam to France and I'm still me. I have learned since that actually I did diminish my experience of the English Channel by doing that a little bit. So people should talk about it with other people. They should be happy. Find people who are happy for you to do what you do. That is very important. And it's something I've had to learn. So I loved swimming in Hawaii and I wanted to go and do a swim in Hawaii because I'd fallen in love with swimming in Hawaii. I wanted to take Dylan to Hawaii. I wanted to see how he coped. I knew at this stage that he had learning difficulties. I wasn't aware what kind of learning difficulties he had, but he was falling through the schooling system. His dad had also completely disappeared from our lives. So we were both fairly devastated at the time. And Hawaii was somewhere that gave me a lot of soul food. So we went to Hawaii for the winter, my little boy and I. When I was over there, I realized that there was this swim called the Molokai Channel, which was, their equivalent of our English Channel. No British woman had ever swum it before. And I was kind of curious as to why not. I was the 28th person to ever swim it. And it was, it was a fascinating swim. It didn't go according to plan. It was more like I thought the English Channel would be, in the sense that it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. So that was kind of my celebration, and that was kind of my next step. And it wasn't something I planned while I was in the water. But it became the obvious next step.
So when you are swimming, swimming these distances, what's the distance? Or do you say the Molokai?
Yeah, the Molokai Channel is 28 miles in a straight line. You tend to swim up to a third extra.
Got you. I mean, I know that you'll get asked this question all the time, and it's probably really difficult to answer. But are you going back to, when you're swimming, are you going back to that time when you were in the monastery and you're just fully in meditation mode? Are you completely zoned out? Is your brain asleep? Are you counting strokes? Are you singing? What's going on inside your head?
I use the tools that I learnt in meditation, which become kind of second nature. So I don't like being distracted. So I don't sing, I don't write lists, I don't imagine something. I don't tend to count strokes unless I'm really struggling with an emotion, because that's, using your mind. So 1, 2, 3, you're making yourself focus on something. I like to sit in that kind of space where concentration is fairly effortless. So I just become aware if something's not working and just nudge it back into space a little bit. So if I get a little tweak, or if I'm aware that my leg flicked out of the water, just noticing, completely being absorbed. It's kind of very, very mindful. You drift in and out of awareness that your brain it's not asleep, but it goes really, really still and quiet and calm when everything's ticking over as it should. And then I know when about 5 minutes before I'm due a feed, I'll get, I can't say what kind of emotion it is, but I will get an emotion. I just become aware of emotion, I suppose, more than anything else. And it could be any emotion, but I could become aware of emotion. So I know that in the next few minutes, I'll require some fuel. And, you just become very aware of the sort of the physiognomy and the biochemistry of how your body's functioning. So, you have your fuel, and then for the next 5 minutes, you're on a little bit of a sugar high, because all of a sudden you've got something to work with, even though you don't have fast change sugars. It's like your body goes, okay, I've got something to work with now. And then you feel the energy kick in, and then you can relax again. And then you've got another half hour, 45 minutes before it starts again. And it's lovely. I love it. I become absorbed. So in the daylight, where you've got the light retracting through the seawater, you get this sort of inverted starburst that kind of sucks away down below you. And when the water's really, really clear, you can sometimes get almost vertigo, but really entranced watching this kind of pinpoint of light. And at night, you've got phosphorescence, and you just watch the spiraling lights cascading off your fingers and thinking, oh, if I can see them, sharks can see them. And then you go, no, don't think that. Focus. And you just relax into just whatever your senses kind of send you, which becomes not very much when you're swimming in the sea.
I mean, doing these channel swims and pushing your body, doing these incredible endurance feats around the world, what do you think you've learned from them that you've been able to apply to your life and to raising your son and to making sure that you can live the best life possible?
I have a series of tattoos that I have carved into my body, what I've learned from channel swimming. So the English Channel, I designed a tattoo because I had become my own hero, and I never want to forget that feeling of it's not fearful to accept responsibility, to step up to the plate and go, do you know what? Yeah, it's okay. So I had a tattoo designed there. I had a tattoo designed after the first Molokai channel because I really felt, yes, I can. It's only me that is swimming this channel, but actually no man is an island, and it takes a village to raise a kid and to learn to ask for help. Because on that channel I broke, and I had to lift my head, and I had to talk to this stranger in the kayak beside me and pour out my heart and try and figure out how to get through something. And it was the first time that I'd allowed myself to be fully vulnerable, and it was a good thing. And that's where my strength now comes from, is my ability to be completely vulnerable, know that I can hand my life to somebody else, and I'm happy with that. I've learned it's not going to look like you plan. It's not often going to look like you hope, but you've got to let go of what's holding you back. And if what's holding you back is just because it's not going to look right in your head, oh, scrap that. I learned that you can be the Alan Sugar in your mind. So if there's a voice in your head and it's not yours, fire it. If there's a voice in your head that's yours, but you don't like what it's saying, fire it. If there's a voice in your head, it's yours, it's working in your head, but actually you don't like where it's going, fire it. You can really choose to do what you want. And then I've also learned that triumph has many guises, and strength, we practice and we're taught to practice. And particularly in the adventure world, we're very, very guilty of this in the adventure world. The strength of never, ever, ever letting go, the strength of tenacity, of perseverance, never, ever, ever give up, crawl bleeding across the finish line. But the wisdom comes of when the strength is required to let go, even if you have to let go of your goal. And stopping my last project was the best thing I have ever done, and something that I feel was a great gift to my life, because it was finally the realization that, yes, talking about these swims, you do accept an amount of expectation and pressure from other people. But you've got to remember, at the heart of the darkest night, that's not why you're doing it. That people go, oh, it's amazing. Yeah, you can do it. You can be the world's first person to do X, Y, and Z. And I believe in you, and I'm counting on you to do it. It's like, okay, that's great. That's your expectations. I'm swimming it for this reason, for me. And you can't actually say that to people. You can't say, well, I'm not swimming it for you. But in the water and on any adventure, when you're trying to reach the summit, you can only be doing it for a very, very personal reason. You can only do it for your why. and to let go of other people's expectations, to let go of even your destination, to let go of everything that's holding you back in the wider sense of your life, because your life is your biggest adventure. That has been a really, really fascinating thing to have experienced and to have learned.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the project you're talking about is Ocean 7. I mean, do you just want to quickly explain what Oceans 7 was?
Sure. Ocean 7. So Ocean 7 is a list of channels around the world that was collated by the World Open Water Swimming Association. It's the equivalent of mountaineering 7 summits, but instead of being the 7 longest channels or the 7 highest peaks, these channels have been collated to basically take a swimmer apart. So the different requirements needed are so different and varied that to be able to swim all 7, you have to be a complete swimmer to be able to cope with speed, power, cold, hot, ultra distance, all these different requirements. So I decided I wanted to see if I could swim all 7 in a single year. And I was the first person to ever try and do it. And I wanted to do it to see if it was possible. And somebody has swum 4 in a year before, and I've swum 4 in a year now. And it was during the 5th. It was the decider. It was the career-defining swim, the world record, that I pulled the plug, not because I was afraid of completing, but because the stress of everybody else's expectations on my life was actually damaging Dylan. So I pulled the plug. I pulled the plug at the moment where I could see the beach where I was due to land. And it was interesting because I got in the water intending to complete the swim, knew very, very quickly, actually, I didn't want to. And I actually then actively didn't want to reach the other side. And it was fascinating because I've never not completed a swim that I've set out to swim. I've always found a way to work with my brain. But it was such a relief to not run a second script because the mum in me knew that Dylan was getting really, really stressed and really disquieted. And he has been now diagnosed with autism. So, it's precious to me that he doesn't get damaged by doing what we do. And I was so aware that I was starting to swim for other people. And I knew that my body felt the most amazing it's ever felt. I knew that I could finish the swims. I knew that physically I could do it. So the challenge was no longer there. It was literally like something just in the water went poof and it was gone. The challenge was no more because I knew that it was possible. So I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to do the grind. My brain went, you can stop. And my body went, oh, okay.
It can almost be when you are living your true life, which is what I feel that you are doing. You're making all these choices. You're for you, for your family, for you, for yourself and Dylan. And it can almost be, or how I see it as, it can almost be easy to be like, yes, I'm going to go, not easy, but you know what I mean. But I'm going to go do these Ocean 7. I'm going to go do these great big challenges, and everyone's very supportive generally, of those type of decisions because it's such an amazing and incredible thing to do. But when you make a decision which is being true to yourself, being true to your family, being true to your values and your beliefs of what you want to do, but it isn't a decision which other people may agree with, that's got to be incredibly hard to do. And I suppose that's almost like the real test of how are you really comfortable and confident in yourself by being able to say, actually, do you know what? I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I got asked a question in a public speech. I got asked a question by somebody who said, aren't you worried about your reputation? About the fact that you got out when you were fine. And I've thought about my response, and so when you're put on the spot, you kind of, say whatever you're going to say. And I agree with what I said, but what I kind of wanted to get across was the fact that I can stop being a swimmer, I can stop being a massage therapist, I can stop being a lot of things, but I can't stop being a mum, and I wouldn't want to. So my reputation means nothing compared to how I feel at home alone with my son in bed at night. There is nothing that matters more. And I also think that your reputation is not so much about what you do, but how you wear what you do. So yes, I stopped my project, and I could have crumbled and I could have disappeared and said, oh, I failed. I didn't fail. I celebrate the fact that I've achieved what only one person ever has achieved. And then I got in another swim and, swam most of that as well. So technically I could say I've done more than anybody else ever. If that's the way I'm going to go for it, I can shout all of the successes that I've had, but the successes, that's just a tick box exercise. I'm not interested in completing the list. That's not why I was doing it. So it's the toughest decision I made, but it was the one that I was happiest making. It's like when you get the pressure and the weight of something that is like an impending sense of doom. So that when you actually reach the point of no return, like a bungee jump, standing with your toes on the edge, that's where the terror comes. When you're in free fall, it's nothing but a relief. Making the decision was hard. Living with the decision has actually been very easy. And I don't quite get why people have a problem with it. I understand why, technically, because I didn't complete what I set out to complete. But living with what I live with and knowing on a personal level why I was doing the swims, to me, it was just the obvious next step.
Does Dylan swim?
Yeah, but he climbs. That's his thing. Climbing is where the world makes sense to Dylan, hanging fingertips only off something very high and scary. But yeah, he's a very good swimmer. He loves surfing as well. He does love the water. Climbing is where the world makes sense for him.
And do you think that your next adventure, your next challenge is going to be a climbing challenge, or are you sort of taking a little break from adventures and challenges at the moment? But what's happening?
No, not taking a break. No, I won't ever do a climbing challenge. I'm hypermobile and I would break if I tried to climb. I want to give Dylan more access to climbing. So we're going up to Kendal Mountain Film Festival in a couple of weeks. And that's really exciting for me to take Dylan up there to meet people who do what he is natural at for a living. I let him choose our next adventure. So in February, we're going to Alaska and we're going to go and stay in a yurt in -50. Because that's what he decided he wanted to do, to see the northern lights and moose in the snow.
I think I would have been leaving open magazines of Hawaii around the house, like subliminal messaging.
Oddly enough, I said, if you were going to go somewhere for the winter, where should we go and live? He said immediately Hawaii, because the water's nice there, Mummy. But for an adventure, he wants to go to deep snow. And I think sneakily it's because I physically can't swim.
How old's Dylan now?
He's 9 now.
Oh, I bet. Do you look back and just can't believe where the time's gone?
Yeah. It's crazy how much we've done in the last 5 years, and I'm so proud that he's come on this journey with me. And actually, one of the things that he was most worried about when I got back from got out of the water in Japan and went back to the hotel and said, right, that's it, I got out of the water and I'm not doing any more. He kind of looked at me as only an autistic person, said, Mummy, you're a bit of a disappointment. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, because we'll never adventure again. And I realized that actually in his life, since he was 3, all our adventures have been based around a swim, which is why I said, do you know what, Dylan, you can choose whatever you want to do. You can choose our next adventure. And I love the fact that he has adventure in his genes now. He is built to adventure. He copes so well with long haul flights, with jet lag, with he climbed Table Mountain barefoot at 3.5 in Cape Town. It's just, what he can do is brilliant. And I love the fact that he's starting to go, oh, okay, let's check that out. And so I do leave beautiful picture book, kind of lovely photographic adventure books lying around, and we pore over those and go, well, that would be nice to see. Oh, well, should we go and check that out? We might do the Santiago, the road, the Compostela road. So we might walk that at some point.
Oh, you are just such an incredible role model. Firstly, obviously, to your son and how you're bringing him up and how you're embracing adventure and the lifestyle, but to so many other women out there who may be thinking, how do I bring adventure into my life with a child, especially if, they don't necessarily have a partner, or if they do have a partner, how do they balance it out? But if you were to give, I don't know, whether it's a philosophy or some words of advice or just, I don't know, just some top tips or just something for the women and men listening out there, who maybe just need a little bit of encouragement to get after their next big challenge?
Ooh, I would say dig out the bucket list of when you were a kid and see what is left to do on it. Because it was amazing to me to actually realize that I had built my own house, which I'd always wanted to do. It was a plywood structure shack in Hawaii, but it was a house and I lived in it. I plumbed it with irrigation pipe. I did it all. I'd climbed a mountain, albeit a small one. I'd done all these amazing things that, great, okay. But what was left to do? And it was surprising and fascinating in that process of, do I need to do that now? No, you find the one that makes you go, ooh, I'm a bit scared of that one. Break it down and do it. Break it down into sizable chunks and your life will thank you, because you never know where it's going to take you. I thought I was from the English Channel and then go back to normal. And it has changed my life because it's changed my horizons. And I know so much more of what I'm capable of, or what Dylan's capable of, or what my life is capable of. And it's led me down the most amazing path. So I'd encourage anybody to go for the biggest, the scariest, because you can always change your mind part way along the road. You can always change your mind. But if you don't ever start, you can't ever say, I can do more.
Absolutely. And Beth, where's the best place for people to find more information out about you?
So I've got a website, bethfrench.co.uk. Facebook is /BethFrenchLives. Instagram, Beth French Lives. Come find me, come blog, and yeah.
Beth, it's been such an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I cannot wait to share your story. It has just been inspiring. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really, really cool. Thank you.
Happy New Year, tribe. I hope you have had an awesome start to the beginning of 2018. Now, may have been listening to Beth and been thinking, do you know what? I want to give swimming a go. I want to go do some open water swimming. I want to get outside my comfort zone. And if you do, I've got a few more podcast episodes I want to recommend that you listen to. So go back and take a listen to Lisa Williams, who we spoke to, I believe in 2015 or 2016. And she shares more about her channel swim, how she got back into swimming, why she got back into swimming, and what it was like to actually swim across the English Channel. Absolutely amazing story. Equally, go and take a listen to Ness Knight, who we spoke to in 2017. Ness was the first woman to swim the River Thames, so definitely worth a listen. She also talks about some of her other big adventures, which is, again, super exciting to follow. And if you just want to hear more about open water swimming and swimming in general, and from somebody who has to be one of the most passionate people, who is just a big believer in that swimming is for anybody, then please also take a listen to Alice Gartland, who is a phenomenal swimmer. She's swum all over the world, and it's not even that she's a phenomenal swimmer, it's the fact that she is so passionate about swimming and is so encouraging and wants to get other women swimming and fit and active and in the outdoors. So definitely my 3 recommendations. Go and take a listen to Alice Gartland, Ness Knight, and Lisa Williams. Now, as it is the new year, I don't want to go on about New Year's resolutions and goals and everything else, because I'm sure you've heard too much of it. But if you're in this position where you're thinking, I still don't know what I want to do, I need some tips, I need some inspiration, then I've got 2 podcast episodes I'd love for you to go and take a listen to. Again, in the back catalogue, go and listen to Annie Ross from Exert. And Exert is basically a mixture of the 2 words exercise and work, so exert. And Annie basically came up with 52 challenges to do in 52 weeks. Annie was working a full-time job, but she wanted to fit more exercise into her life. So if you're currently in that situation, you're thinking, how can I fit exercise into my life? Take a listen to Annie Ross on the Tough Girl podcast, and she'll share some of her examples, some of her tips, some of her advice about how she did it. Equally, if you are stuck for ideas, then go and take a listen to Sam Taylor. And we spoke to Sam back in September 2017, and Sam talked about her idea to do 100 sports, to try them all out. And she's written a book about it, and she shares, not all 100 obviously, but she shares more about the sports that stuck with her, why she picked them, what she learned from them. And it could just give you a few little ideas of things that you want to try out in 2018, these new opportunities, new year, and for you to just go out and give something a go, to try something new. Now, as an extra special bonus, because it is 2018, I also did ask Beth some extra questions from the Tough Girl Tribe. They are sort of they're quick fire questions, they're random questions. We talk about training, we talk about food, we talk about loads of different things. It's a very quick, informative episode. It's just shy of 10 minutes, and that will be available on this coming Thursday on Tough Girl Extra. So to make sure you don't miss out, please do hit that subscribe button to make sure that you get access to all of the episodes when they come out. Throughout 2018, all of the new episodes will be coming out at 7 o'clock Tuesday morning, Tough Girl Tuesday, as I like to call it. And if you're thinking, how can I support this amazing podcast? I can give you 3 quick and easy ways to do it. 1, send a tweet to myself and Beth on Twitter saying how much you've enjoyed it, because then that tells all your friends and all your followers what you've been listening to, and hopefully it'll inspire them to click on the link and go and check out Beth and myself, and hopefully go and find the podcast. If you haven't left a review yet, it takes less than 2 or 3 minutes to write a review. Just tell everyone what you're listening to, why you enjoy it, why you listen to it every single week, and why they should as well. Thirdly, you can become a patron. Go to Patreon, patreon.com, and you can financially support the podcast every single week going forward. It is a monthly contribution from $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever it is that you can afford. Think about it like a monthly magazine subscription. And for that magazine subscription, you're going to be getting at a minimum 4 episodes, which are going to be around 40 minutes to an hour long. So that's 4 hours of content a month. Sometimes there's bonus content like this week where we have, extra chat with Beth as well. So you are getting a lot for your money. And what you're doing is helping to support me. You're helping to support the podcast. You're helping to support Tough Girl Challenges. And you're also helping me to spread the message about these incredible women and what they're doing. We've now interviewed over 140 women, 140 female adventurers, triathletes, runners, swimmers, mountaineers, ordinary women who are just getting out there and making it happen. And what this is going to make do is cause a ripple effect, because suddenly people will see their friends and family doing it and think, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And you know what? You can do it. You can do whatever you put your mind to. So if you haven't signed up for that challenge yet, go and do it. Take 1 step towards achieving your dreams and do it today. Take action today towards that goal, towards that dream. Go out and make it happen. Hugely supportive of everything you're doing. Please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. I always love to hear from you, so send me an email and let me know what your plans are for 2018. You can follow me on Facebook at Sarah Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at _tough_girl. I'm also on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges. So loads of ways to follow along. Guys, have a fantastic 2018. This is going to be an incredible year for Tough Girl Challenges, and I'm so excited that you are going to be here with me every single step of the way. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.